Welcome to the Board of Mayor and Aldermen workshop. It is July 30th, and it is 6:30 p.m. First, we have the Citizens Forum. We have one speaker who has signed up. That is Doug Schaefer. Sir, if you'd please come forward, state your name and address for the record. You'll have 3 minutes when you hear the alarm. Your time is up.
I won't need 3 minutes. My name's Doug Schaefer. I live at 192 Morningside Drive, and I just wanted to come forward because in the application I sent in, I said I had a master's in human resources from Salt Lake City, Utah. That's not quite right. It's the University of Utah in Salt Lake City. My wife's my typist, and she told me after it was sent. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. That'll close out the Citizens Forum. We're going to move on to the workshop. I will have the prayer. The Pledge of Allegiance will be by Alderman No. First order of business is the Matt Church investigation report. Mr. Alex Little.
Good evening.
Good evening.
As you all know, Alderman Church has resigned, which concludes, in essence, the work that we've done. But I wanted to give context of that in a public forum so that there can be no accusation that sort of what's happened over the past few months isn't fully sort of presented to this body and ultimately to the public. As you know, about a year ago, I was appointed as a special city attorney to investigate circumstances that could lead to the filing of an ouster petition. The statutes at issue here are under Tennessee Code 847-101 and the subsequent sections. And they relate to circumstances in which a public official in Tennessee might justifiably be removed from office. It can't be done easily. Petition needs to be filed. There's a public hearing. There can be a jury trial, ultimately determine those matters. In the course of our investigation, we interviewed individuals who worked with the city of Laverne and individuals who had information about former Alderman Church's conduct. Towards the fall of last year, I think it's fair to say that we were concerned about the behavior and the evidence we heard, but we were not prepared to move forward with the petition at that time. As we were in the process of conducting or preparing to conduct more interviews, we then learned of a circumstance that there may have been the commission of a crime by the former alderman. And that first came to our attention late 2019. In those circumstances, we have sort of a couple considerations, or I felt as the city attorney for this purpose, a couple considerations. The first was to make sure that ultimately the city is protected and that if an individual who has committed criminal conduct is in a place of authority, that they be removed through the proper ouster provisions. At the same time, there are law enforcement people who are conducting an investigation. I don't want to get in the way of that. And third, I don't want to waste the city's money to duplicate efforts and to essentially do the criminal investigation at the same time that folks are. The employer and the complainant who ultimately became the victim of the crime was a company called Premier Protective Services based in Nashville. I and my staff maintain communication with Premier Protective Service through their attorney, learned the circumstances that ultimately led to the former alderman's indictment, and chose for a number of months to wait to see how the district attorney was going to proceed. We had conversations with the assistant district attorney, which led us to believe that charges were going to be imminent. In the course of doing so, however, we wanted to make sure that if, because of COVID or other circumstances, things got delayed, we didn't want to put the city in a position where an individual who was in a governance authority had an outstanding criminal conduct and was still in a position of governance. And so at that time, towards the summer, the beginning of the summer, my staff began to draft a petition that took into account the facts that we had learned that we believed could amount to ouster. And so I'm going to put those on the record because they aren't otherwise on the record, and I think it's important that the public knows the general circumstances here. We learned of an accusation where the former alderman used his position at Premier Protective Services to mislead customers of that company as to the fact that he owned the company and as to the ultimate price of services that were being rendered by the company. The general accusation was that he had received an amount from 2 different customers that was in excess of what the services actually cost, and that he then pocketed that excess to a total of $6,000 on 2 separate occasions, each of which involved thousands of dollars. This was learned because the customers eventually had communication with the true owner of the company and the true staff who noticed the discrepancy and began to investigate the circumstances surrounding it. Former Alderman Church was terminated. They conducted their own investigation, and they eventually led to report that to the police. The details will come out in more detail if there are criminal proceedings, and I don't want to, step in the way of them doing so, but I think it's important to know essentially the accusation was fraud committed on either the employer or the employer's customers, which led to the former alderman pocketing money. Now, I think it's also important for this body to understand the circumstances of Mr. Church's resignation from this body. He was indicted by the grand jury in Davidson County. I don't have the specific date here. It would have been the first week of July. As soon as I received a copy of the indictment, we completed our petition for ouster and was ready to be drafted and filed the following week, and I began to engage in conversations with Mr. Church's lawyer, both criminal defense lawyer and his lawyer he had retained for the ouster purposes, with the goal of determining whether or not he was going to dispute an ouster petition, which would obviously cost the city a great deal of money to have to litigate that, or whether he would resign. And so we told him if he had not given us information by that Tuesday, I think by July 8th, that we would be filing the ouster petition on July 8th. His lawyer, as you know from the correspondence he received, did forward his resignation letter, and so we did not file an ouster petition at that time. But it's important, I think, the body knows that we were prepared and in fact had drafted the petition to be filed that day. I'm happy to answer your questions. I think this, for my purposes, resolves my work. I'd propose that I prepare essentially a final closing letter to the city that I can get you in the next week that very succinctly summarizes what I've just told you and wraps up our representation. Any questions?
Any questions from any of the board members?
Were there any circumstances in the interview process that you discovered not related to the crime committed to his previous employer?
That were what? Were there other circumstances that were troubling?
Yes. Other troubling items?
Yes, I think that one of the principles of sort of due process is that people have the opportunity to explain or to otherwise dispute an account. And so I think, be reluctant to talk about that in a forum without, sort of accusing him of something and then having him an opportunity to say so. But I do think it's fair to say that we maintained the investigation, continued to work on it, because we believe there were leads that would eventually tell us that there was conduct which would fit under the statute. The statute requires a great deal of misconduct. You can't just sort of screw up something in a minor way and be kicked out of office. And so we always, from the beginning, maintained that until the time that Alderman Church resigned, certainly believed there was conduct that could fit the statute, and the evidence that we uncovered tended to continue to point us in that direction.
Thank you.
So I hope that answers the question.
Mr. Little, was the Rutherford County DA or any other DAs on board with the potential ouster that you had drafted?
Yeah, so once the indictment had been returned in Davidson County, I did speak with the District Attorney General here, Jennings Jones, about participating in the ouster proceedings. The reason for that is generally these can be brought by the city attorney, the attorney general of the state, and the district attorney general. And it was my goal, given the circumstances and what we felt was clear and convincing evidence of the standard being met for ouster, that the district attorney should be involved. And after being apprised of the facts and circumstances, he stated his willingness to do so. And so had we gone forward, we expected we would have done so with the full support of the district attorney general and likely even the state of Tennessee. Those conversations, I opened conversations with the Tennessee attorney general. We did not need to continue them because Alderman Church resigned before we had to make any decisions.
Thank you. Any other questions?
I'd just like to say thank you for your expeditious work and your keeping us informed on everything.
You're very welcome. I appreciate it. It was an honor, and hope we don't have to do this again.
Hopefully not.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Take care.
At the meeting Tuesday night, we will have Outstanding Performance Awards. We will then have, or in first order of business, Tuesday night will be the motion to appoint a new alderman. Everyone should have received in your packets, everyone who has submitted a letter of intent and a resume. Please make sure that you review those thoroughly. If you have questions for the applicants, their contact information is in there, so be sure to reach out to them with those questions.
So do we talk about that tonight?
As far as questions for them or
No,
about the
just in
process?
general?
We can talk about the process, yes, sir.
Because apparently there was a wrench put into things today, from my understanding, that the Election Commission says that the applications that everybody's sent in and the resumes that everybody's sent in is pretty much nil and void unless they went to the Election Commission and got a petition for a 2-year term.
Well, this is separate from a 2-year election term. This appointment is for 3 months until the November election. At the November election, there will be the elections for 2 4-year terms and 1 2-year term. And anyone who wants to run for those would pull petitions, just like the normal process, get the signatures and turn that in.
Okay, so at the meeting Tuesday, we will vote on someone to appoint for those 3 months, whether they picked up a 2-year petition or not.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And how will that go as far as whoever speaks up first to make it a recommendation?
Yeah, it's a motion, a second, and then the board votes. If there's any discussion after the second, then there will be any discussion, and then, like I said, the board votes.
All right.
Any other questions?
Nope.
Okay. Then we will have the oath of office for that new alderman. You should all have a copy of your minutes from the July 7th, 2020 regular meeting and the July 20th, 2020 special meeting to review and approve. We'll have departmental reports. Then we move on to old business, which is second reading ordinance 2020-08, an ordinance to amend the Laverne Municipal Code by amending Title 16 by adding a new Chapter 5 entitled Moving of Houses, Structures, or Buildings, and the amending Title 12, Chapter 1, Section 12-103 regarding miscellaneous fees. And this is something we've already voted on last month. Any questions about this? Moving on to second reading ordinance 2020-09, an ordinance to amend the fiscal year 2019-2020 budget. And again, this is second reading. This involves, I believe, the police department and fleet maintenance. Any questions? Moving on to the consent agenda. A, approve city bids and purchases as recommended. Number 1, we've got the bid for the Ridgemont sewage pump station replacement.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Board of Aldermen. On July 14th, the city of Laverne accepted bids for the Ridgemont sewage pump station replacement. We received 5 bids that day, and our low bidder was BAM2 Incorporated with a bid of $197,357, which is roughly $20,000 less than the next bidder. It is under our budget and under our construction cost estimate. Our firm has not worked with BAM2 in the past, nor has the city of Laverne done business with BAM2 in the past that I'm aware of. And so we checked their references with a number of people that they have done work for, and they received very good recommendations. We received very good recommendations for that company. They have replaced a number of stations very similar to the one that we're contemplating here in Laverne, so we would ask that you award the contract for Ridgemont Sewage Pump Station to BAM2 Incorporated.
Any questions?
Thank you very much.
Moving on to number 2, bid extension, road salt bid. Ms. Felicia.
Good evening. We did I don't know if you remember, but last year we did the bid for 3 years for the road salt. And we did receive an extension and it was incorrect, so I contacted the original gentleman that I spoke with, and he told me it would be we would be paying the same as we paid last year for the road salt. So I'm recommending we do that. And then we have the GSA contract for the network switch replacement. That is grant funds. Yay, that's good. And all of, if you look at your memo, that's all in order. And then we have a state contract purchase for a vehicle for the fire department. The price is not just for the vehicle. I gave you the price for everything that it's gonna need to include for the entire iPads, everything it's gonna need on it. Striping, any questions?
This is for the assistant chief or the deputy chief position.
That's my understanding of the assistant chief position.
Okay? Any questions? Thank you, Felicia. Moving on to B, approved proposal from Griggs and Maloney for engineering services for the Cedar Park Circle Waterline Improvements Project. Welcome back.
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, Aldermen. Thank you for the opportunity to present this proposal tonight for the engineering services related to the Cedar Park Circle, Waterline Improvements Project. The primary scope of this improvement would be replacing approximately 7,000 feet of 6-inch water line and all of the service line connections on Cedar Park Circle and its side streets, along with reconnection to the existing fire hydrants. I think there's an additional fire hydrant or 2 that would be needed, and then full width resurfacing of the impacted streets once all of the main lines and service lines are replaced. The engineering services would include the design of the construction plans to be submitted to TDOT for review and approval, and then the city water department would use those plans to install by. And then we would also provide as-needed site visits during construction. Are there any questions?
And this is $55,000 roughly.
Yes, sir. We included an allowance for surveying if needed. I'm thinking that we can get by without it, but just in case something unexpected comes up, we went ahead and included that.
I know this is badly needed. I remember last year where they had a break, repaired it, right down from it, broke again, they repaired it, and it broke 2 or 3 more times in that area from where they kept doing those repairs. So hopefully this will shore up those residents.
Tore up a gentleman's driveway. I think they had to tear his driveway up to get to it.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
C, ratify the acceptance of the Department of Justice Office of Justice Programs Grant for the Bureau of Justice Assistance Fiscal Year 20 Coronavirus Emergency Supplemental Fund funding program. This is just a program that we can use for additional funds for the city for reimbursement related to COVID. Does anyone have any questions? Moving on to D, accept the TDOT grant for the City of Laverne Advanced Traffic Management System Project. This is a big one. This made the news. This is for our sidewalks going from Davidson County to the Smyrna city limits. It includes crosswalks at our intersections with lights, and the amount is $2.6 million that we would receive, and the matching portion is $86,150. So absolutely amazing grant for the city.
That's good stuff.
Yes. Any questions?
No, but I am very excited about this one.
This is a big win for the city and its residents. Moving on to new business. First reading ordinance 2020-10, an ordinance to amend Title 12 of the Laverne Municipal Code and adopt the following standard code, the 2018 International Energy Conservation Code. Randolph, do you have some information on this?
I do, sir.
Please, please. tell me.
You'll hand that to the Vice Mayor and pass one down. I've got one all the way to Evan. I think maybe that top page was mine, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
What I'm handing down to y'all is rulemaking and decisions from the state of Tennessee, what they did on July 17th to adopt the 2018 Family of I codes. Basically, it's everything that the builders, that contractors that were in here for the workshop in June, I guess, for the July meeting. If you'll notice at page 3, I've highlighted a section there that deals with just this issue, the 2018 Energy Conservation Code, and it plainly states that by adoption of the ordinance from the state of Tennessee, that by the language in that ordinance, that we revert to the 2009 table, as we did when we adopted the 2012 back some years ago. It allows for the 2x4 walls, pretty much as it, I mean, we continue to do as we've been doing. So that's an option for you folks to consider. Bottom line is, it's y'all's decision as to what you would prefer to do. I obviously would rather us be in the 2018 cover to cover for a number of reasons, and one that I've just recently discovered, that home energy rating, HERS, it's acronym, HERS, the home energy rating system. That is an inspector, a rater, if you will, goes to a home to grade it, if you will, for energy compliance. And it's becoming a policy, I guess, or the fact will be that when that HERS rater walks into a home to do the you've seen on your appliances the Energy Star. That's basically what this is for your home energy. If when that rater walks in and there is a 2x4 wall versus a 2x6 wall, he will, at some point in time when it becomes mandated to, he will fail that particular home for the reason that it is not compliant with the 2018 Energy Conservation Code. Having that bit of failure, the availability for government-backed loans like FHA, VA, and some THDA loans, they will not qualify for it. They will be strictly conventional financing or cash, whatever the case may be, but they won't have the opportunity, the luxury of having the government-backed loan, because they will not be graded approval in the HERS energy rating system. So at some point in time, that table 2009, albeit what it is today, will have to go. I mean, it can't stay forever. If a builder, chooses to build a home and he chooses to build it out of the 2x4 walls, using the exterior walls with the fenestration and the U factor of his insulations, and he then tries to market that home, it won't pass that HERS rating, and therefore the government funding won't be there for it. So that's another reason that I explained other reasons in last month's workshop, and I'm sure that if you choose to adopt the 2018 with the tables from the 2009, it's not going to kill anybody, and it's not going to mean gloom, despair. But at some point in time, a builder is going to build his home using 2x4 walls with that U factor and that fenestration of heat and air loss. He'll be begging to build that out of 2x6 walls, in my opinion. Now that, that's just, y'all choose to do what you prefer to do. We can come back 6 months, a year from now and draft another ordinance that will require that homes be built with that 2x6 wall, that exterior wall made of 2x4 or 2x6 construction for a number of reasons. So, I am in the field to do whatever it is this board decides.
Thank you, Randolph.
I'm sure everybody else got emails from people like I did this week, and I'm all about better built, safety, quality instead of quantity. It's probably gonna cost a little more money, but I think as a homeowner, you can finance the extra money for little or nothing and have a good, it's like I was talking to my son about. He said, Dad, it sounds to me it's like the Three Little Pigs story. I said, yeah, pretty much. You know, you get that good, strong house, so. But I value your opinion, Randolph.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Any other discussion on this? Thank you, Randolph.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
First reading ordinance 2020-11, an ordinance to amend the fiscal year 2020-2021 general fund budget. And this is for a couple different items. The HVAC unit at the police department went out. Of course, the assistant fire chief truck is in here, and then Parks and Recreation part-time position. Any questions? First reading ordinance 2020-12, an ordinance to amend the fiscal year 2020-2021 Streets Capital Projects Fund budget. This is the amount for the sidewalks grant that we mentioned earlier. It's $86,150. Any questions?
No, but that's a fantastic
Do it.
match.
Do it.
Absolutely fantastic match. First reading ordinance 2020-13, an ordinance to amend the fiscal year 2020-2021 Police Impact Fee Fund budget. And this is the police machinery and equipment, and it's $35,000. Any questions? Moving on to appoint or remove committee members. First is the beer board. We have one term vacant where Mr. Jimmy Favorman resigned from this board, and we have one applicant, a Jennifer Maxey. Moving on to Historical Preservation Advisory Committee. We have one term vacant, and we have one applicant, Chuck Isbell. The Laverne Housing Authority. We have one term vacant, and we have one applicant, Chuck Isbell. The Local Emergency Planning Committee, we have one term vacant. We have also the alderman position vacant. We will have on here the stormwater vacancy portion. We have hired that position, and so staff is recommending Alexandra Stark be appointed to that position. And then, of course, we'll discuss the alderman one Tuesday. Moving on to Planning Commission, we have the alderman position vacant. Again, that will be discussed on Tuesday. And then last is the Stormwater Appeals and Advisory Board. The alderman position is vacant, and that will be discussed on Tuesday. Moving on to mayor and alderman comments. Alderman, no.
Just stay cool out there, people, is all I can tell you. It's hot. We need that road salt, Felicia. Bad.
Thank you, Alderman, no. Alderman Jones.
No comment at this time.
Vice Mayor Brown.
I just want to say again, I'm very excited about the sidewalk grant and the crosswalk grant. That's something I've been kind of working towards for a while now. And I know they, we had applied for a grant, and whenever the budget came up, I didn't see that even in the forecasted budget for this year, and that's one of the reasons I voted no on the first reading. It was just a coincidence that that grant happened to come through right after the budget was finalized. It was just serendipity, but it's something that I think will protect our citizens as you walk. It'll make our walkability in Laverne a lot better. Plus, it'll improve the safety of people crossing over Murfreesboro Road. So every intersection with a light will have a crosswalk, and there'll be sidewalks on either side. So I'm very, very excited for that for Laverne. Big win.
Thank you. I want to start off piggybacking that because that is amazing for our city. $2.6 million, and our matching is less than $87,000. That is a huge win, and definitely want to thank Adam Leach, Kimley Horn, and everyone else who had involvement with getting this to go through. This is absolutely amazing. It's definitely going to help that look and feel for Murfreesboro Road as we take that forward. Do want to thank all of the applicants. We have 12 people who applied. One has bowed out, but I want to thank all 12 of them for applying, because this job, as anyone who is sitting up here or has sat up here will tell you, is not an easy job. It's not a 8 to 5 job. It is a job where you get phone calls, you get emails day in, day out, 24/7. So definitely want to give everyone, let them know how much I appreciate them stepping up and volunteering to take this on. That's no easy task at all. I do also want to let the residents know we've been working on some issues and been talking with some residents about NES. And we've had some outages in the community. And I've been in touch with both board members on the NES committee as well as their attorneys. And recently received an email. I'm going to just kind of sum up some of it, but some portions of it that they attribute for issues is friction with vegetation on the lines, that even their own trimming program, even with it in place, degrades the lines in this area. They do talk a lot about the derecho that we had back in May, and then again, June 14th, June 28th, July 12th, talking about various outages. So they are definitely aware of these and working on it. These concerns now have been raised to the operations team, and they are developing a plan that's specifically for our area to address this. That plan, as soon as it's formed, is supposed to be sent over to me, and then I will have Bruce Richardson share that with the rest of this board so that we can get that information out to the community. But of course, weather and COVID has hampered a little bit of that, as COVID has affected everybody's lives here. So we are listening. We are working on this with NES, and hopefully this plan will be put together and implemented fairly quickly so that our residents, I saw even today, had some power issues where some things were tripping. We want to get this fixed just as much as everybody else. So we are working on it, we are listening, and hopefully we'll have some more answers for you soon. With that, call this meeting adjourned.